Welcome to Drive the Daf. Clear, structured explanation of the daily Daf in 20 minutes. You can even follow in the car.
Rosh Hashana Daf Lamed Gimel contains one Mishnah. From the beginning of the Daf until the Mishnah, the Gemara is working through our previous Mishnah phrase by phrase and determining who is the author of that particular phrase, or possibly answering some kashas on the different halachas in the Mishnah. Then we'll get to the next Mishnah, which will talk about how the actual tekios of shofar sound. And the Gemara will give the sources for the general mitzvahs and halachas which we have in tekiyas shofar, beginning of a topic which will take us through to the end of the Masechta. So the Gemara is working through the Mishnah. The Mishnah had said a number of halachos. So the first one, which we'll discuss on the daf, is the halacha that you cannot cut the shofar on Yom Tov. Cut here doesn't necessarily mean cutting it off the animal's head, which would be an issur d'oraisa. It could also mean cutting within the shofar itself to shape it or to clean it. So the Gemara says that you're not allowed to, we quote the Mishnah which said you're not allowed to cut it in a way which would be an issur d'rabbanan nor an issur d'oraisa. So Gemara says, what's an issur d'rabbanan? That would be if you use a sickle to scrape it. That's not a normal tool to use to cut or shape your shofar. An issur d'oraisa would be if you use a knife, which is a normal tool. Gemara says, why do you have to say an issur d'oraisa is asur if an issur d'rabbanan is asur? Gemara says it says zuvein tzarich lomar zu. It's this is asur and certainly this is asur. That's a style of presentation which we find in several mishnayos. Next halacha the Mishnah said was that you're allowed to wash the shofar with water and with oil. So Gemara says that water and with oil are used to polish it, to shine it, which possibly changes and improves the sound. The Gemara notes that you're only allowed to use water and oil. According to the Mishnah, you cannot use meir gaim, you can't use urine. The Gemara says that is like the opinion of Abba Shal that says you cannot put urine in a shofar even if it may improve the shofar, because it is not respectful to wash a davar shel mitzvah in waste material. Next, the Mishnah had said that we do not stop children from blowing the shofar so that they can learn. So the Gemara notes that as children we don't stop, but women we would not allow to blow the shofar on Rosh Hashana, on Yom Tov. So Gemara says that seems to be contradicting a brisa which says that we don't stop women or children. So the Gemara says, well, therefore, what is the halacha contradicting? We have our Mishnah contradicting the brisa as to whether or not women are allowed to blow shofar on Rosh Hashana. So Gemara says it is actually a machlokes. It's dependent on a machlokes Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yosi and Rabbi Shimon. So it's Rabbi Yehuda against Rabbi Yosi and Rabbi Shimon. And the question of a mitzvah that a woman is patur from doing, is she allowed to do it, or is she forbidden to do it because it would be bal tosef? So according to the opinion that says that she's allowed to blow shofar, so we would let her blow shofar on Rosh Hashanah. She can blow shofar if she wants. It's not muktzah for her because it is a mitzvah for her. According to the opinion that she wouldn't be allowed to because it would be bal tosef, so then she has no mutter use for a shofar on Rosh Hashanah, and therefore it would be muktzah, and she should not blow it. Okay, next halach in the Mishnah was that we allow children to play with the shofar in order that they should be able to learn how to blow. So Gemara says that Rabbi Eliezer says that that's even true on Shabbos, so allowed to blow it on Shabbos so that they can learn. The Gemara quotes a brisa that says that. But the brisa has contradictory phrases. The brisa starts off by saying we encourage, or we present to the children the shofar for them to be able to play with it, to occupy themselves with it on Yom Tov and also on Shabbos, so they learn how to blow. But then it says in the latter half of the brisa, it says we do not stop children from blowing on Shabbos or on Yom Tov. So that implies that we don't want them to blow shofar or to play with the shofar, but we don't stop them. So which is it? So the Gemara says it depends what age child you're talking about. If it's a child which is higia lechinach, he's old enough to start learning how to blow, or those halachos, then we allow them, we want them to play with it so they can learn how to blow. If it's a child who's too young, then he has nothing to gain from it. So we won't stop him because he's not a higia lechinach, but he's not at the age that we would encourage him to use it. Okay, next halach in the Mishnah was that somebody who is blowing absent-mindedly, he's just fooling around with the shofar and some sounds come out, not yotza the mitzvah of tekiyas shofar, even if it's a kosher sound. So Gemara says that there are really three levels, though. There's somebody who's blowing, intending to produce tekiyas shofar of the mitzvah. Then there's somebody who's blowing for other purposes, somebody who's blowing to play music. And these are both more intent than somebody who's just not intending to blow at all and accidentally makes the tekiyas shofar sounds. So the implication of our Mishnah is that he's only an idiot if he performed the lowest level of intent, if he didn't even intend to do anything. But if he was intending to play music, then he would be yotza. So which says that seems to support the opinion of Rava that says that somebody who blows a shofar in order to play music is yotza. Which says no, not necessarily. The word that the Mishnah uses is misasek. Misasek means he's busy. So when he's busy with something else as he's blowing the shofar, could mean he's busy with the intent to play music. So the Tana of Mishnah could refer to playing music as misasek also. It could also mean that you're not yotza when you play music and when you're just fooling around, because he calls them both misasek. Therefore, it wouldn't necessarily be a proof to Rava. You can't necessarily make a diak from there that if he's intending to play music, he is yotza. Alright, the last halacha in the Mishnah is that somebody who hears from somebody else who's just fooling around with the shofar is not yotza. The Gemara says that seems to imply, though, that if he hears from somebody who is intending to blow, but he's not intending to be, even though he's not intending to be motzi the person who's listening, he is yotza. So, the Gemara says that would be a kasha on Rabbi Zera. We know that Rabbi Zera had told his servant to have kavana to be mighty him when he blows the shofar. It seemed to indicate that the blower has to have kavana to be motzi the listener. But this Mishnah seems to say otherwise. He just has to not be misasek. The Gemara says no, it's not necessarily a proof. And because the previous halacha was talking about a misasek, so this halacha talked about a misasek. But the same halacha would really be true even if the person was not misasek. He just didn't have kavana to be motzi, that he could not be motzi somebody else, and the person who hears him could not be yotza with his shofar blowing. Okay, now we get to the next Mishnah, which talks about how we blow shofar, how the actual shofar blasts sound. So the Mishnah begins by saying that there are three sets of tikiyas shofar. Right, one for malchus, one for zechonos, one for shofros. So we have three sets of each. There's lots of threes in these halachos. Each set of tikiyas shofar consists of three. That is a tekiya, teruah, tekiya. As we shall see, we break that up into three sets within each because we are not sure what a teruah is, and therefore we do three different versions of a teruah. But this Mishnah is not discussing that. This Mishnah just says that there are three tekiyos, a tekiya, teruah, tekiya. That's one set. And then we have one set each from malchus, zechonos, and shofros. Now, how long does the shofar sounds have to be? So the tekiya sounds like three teruahs together, the Mishnah says, and the teruah sounds like three yevavos, three of the shortest sounds a person could make, three wails. Now, the Mishnah says, you have to have a tekiya before and a tekiya and after every teruah. What if you try to combine the last tekiya of one set with the first tekiya of the next set? So you had one long, one double length tekiya. As we have seen quoted in the Masechtas thus far many times, you're not yotza with it. You cannot artificially view one tekiya as if it was cut into two, and therefore there's only one tekiya, and it only counts as only one. Now, if somebody finishes Tfilas Musaf and he didn't have a shofar, and then afterwards he gets a shofar, so he should do tekiya, teruah, tekiya 3 times, one each from malchus, zechonos, and shofros. Now, is this a mitzvah for the shliach tzibur to do? Tzachovas tzibur, and the shliach tzibur, the leader of the congregation, has to do it, or each individual has to do it himself? So Gemara quotes a machlokas on that. Each, according to Rabban Gamliel, the shliach tzibur is the only one who needs to do it, and he's motzi everybody. According to the Tanakama, each individual is responsible to do his own tekiyas shofar. The Gemara begins with a brisa. The Gemara has a brisa that says that the length of one tekiya is the size of one teruah. Why does that fit with our Mishnah that says that the size of one tekiya is the size of 3 teruahs? Seems to be contradictory. So the Gemara answers, our Mishnah doesn't say one tekiya is 3 teruahs. Our Gemara says tekiyas are as long as 3 teruahs. It means to say that 3 tekiyas are the size of 3 teruahs. So we're doing 3 sets. Each one tekiya is the size of 1 teruah. But it's not contradicting the brisa that says that 1 tekiya is the size of 1 teruah. We just said 3 because we're talking about 3 teruahs. Alright, next the Gemara quotes a phrase in the Mishnah that says that 1 teruah is 3 yevavos. The Gemara says, but there's a brisa that says that tekiya is 3 shvarim. Now, we have to be careful here with our terminology. The word teruah refers to the middle short blasts of the shofar between tekiyas, but the word teruah, the way we use it, refers to one specific type of those. We use it to mean the minimal 9, very tiny short blasts. That's what the Gemara calls yevavos. Gemara uses the word teruah here to refer to tekiah, to refer to the teruah or the shvarim teruah. We haven't differentiated between those at this point. So the Gemara here is, though, the Gemara brings this brisa that says that the size of a teruah has to be 3 shvarim. So the Gemara says, how does that fit with our Mishnah? It says the size of a teruah is 3 yevavos. Yevav is the tiny sound of what we call a teruah, while a shvarim is what we call a shvarim, is much longer. So is it 3 teruahs or is it 3 shvarim? So Gemara says these two you can't fit together. This is a machlokas. Machlokas is based over what is a teruah, and that goes by the story with Sisera's mother. Sisera was a war general who did not return, and his mother was watching from at the window, and she was crying for her son. So the Torah there says in Shoftim, it says Vatayavev Aim Sisera, that Sisera's mother did what's called Yevav, similar to the word Yevava. So what was she doing? What was the sound she was making? That's the sound we're going to make with our shofar. So it's a machokis if she did a ginuach, she did groans, which are longer sounds. That's what we would call shvarim. Or if she did yilala, which is wailing, which those are the short, choppy sounds that we make with the teruah. So that's the two opinions as to what yevava is, and that's the two opinions between our Mishnah and the brisa. All right, now the Gemara quotes a brisa that gives us the source of 2 halachos. First of all, the source that you have to have shofar for teruah. The Torah never mentions shofar on Rosh Hashana. The Torah just says it should be a day of blowing, doesn't say what. And the second halacha is that you have to have a tekiah before and after every teruah. So the Gemara is going to learn, the Gemara will bring a brisa which learns both of these halachos at the tekiyas shofar of Yom Kippur of Yovel. The Gemara is going to link both of those halachos to Rosh Hashanah. So the Gemara quotes the brisa. The brisa says, how do you know that you use a shofar? The Torah says about Yom Kippur, Yovel says v'havarta shofar teruah. It says shofar teruah. Now how do you know that applies to on Rosh Hashanah? The Torah says because it says b'chodesh hashvi'i. Now why do you have to tell me that Yom Kippur is in chodesh hashvi'i? I know that. The Gemara says that's in order to link chodesh hashvi'i, anything in chodesh hashvi'i to each other. So Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, both in chodesh hashvi'i, any chodesh hashvi'i, any 7th month tekiah should be with a shofar. Next halacha is how do you know that you use a tekiah before and after every teruah? So the Gemara says you have to have a tekiah before because it says v'havarta shofar teruah. You should pass the shofar of blowing, meaning you should pass the tekiah before the blowing. And we know you should have one after because it says ta'aviru shofar. You should have passed the shofar, meaning after the shofar you should have a tekiah. And again, that applies by Yovel. That's where it's written. It also applies to Rosh Hashanah because it says Hashvi'i in the same pasuk, and that links the two. This halacha, which applies by Yom Kippur, also applies on Rosh Hashanah. Now we're already on the next stuff, but let's just finish the brisa. The brisa brings another halacha. It says, how do you know that there's supposed to be 3 sets for Malchus, Sechonos, and Shofar? So it says because the word teruah is used 3 times describing the shofar blowing of Rosh Hashanah. It says v'avarta, or of Yom Kippur, it says v'avarta shofar teruah, Shabbos and Zichron teruah, and Yom teruah yelachem. Now, again, how do you know to link Yom Kippur and Rosh Hashanah? So here, the brisa brings a slightly different limud. Instead of bringing the hekesh, which we had up till now, of B'chodesh HaShvi, it says the pasuk of Shvi Shvi. The word Shvi appears in both contexts, and that's Gzeira Shava. So therefore you learn out that you have 3 sets of 3 for a total of 9. So Gemara asks, why do you use Gzeira Shava before we're using a Hekesh? Why would you switch from the Hekesh to the Gzeira Shava? So Gemara says Gzeira Shava is stronger than the Hekesh, and what the Gemara means to say was that if we wouldn't have the Gzeira Shava, we could have also had the Hekesh. Could have also had the co-joining of the halachas of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. We wouldn't have to rely only. If we wouldn't have the Gzeira Shava of the word Shvi Shvi, we could use the fact that the extra phrase B'chodesh HaShvi is there.
Drive the Daf is a project of the Grand Woodlands Shul and is presented by Rabbi Yitzchak Landa. Find us on YouTube or subscribe to daily emails by emailing drivethedaf@gmail.com.